Okay, questions. One of the things I didn't cover in this, sometimes I get a little bit time crunched, was what type of line that I have on my rods and what I use for leader. This reel here, I've actually got a 9.2 pound test line on it. It looks like 6, but if you're going to go to the store and buy line, I'd recommend an 8 pound test for your main line. This is what I'm using on my downrigger. Part of the reason is you want a smaller diameter line so it cuts through the water column. So if you're down 60 feet with your downrigger clip, you're not going to have a lot of blowback with it. All the lures that I sell are tied with basically 14 pound test leader. A couple reasons for that. The heavier, stiffer leader is going to help transfer action from the dodger to the lure. And number 2, kokanee do a lot of damage to your terminal tackle. So by having a stiffer leader, you're not going to have to retie it as much. A lot of tackle companies will tie it with a really small light, and a lot of it's because they want it to bust. But personally, by having a stiffer leader, you're going to get better action off of the lure, and then you also won't have to retie it as much.
Do you use fluoro?
I do not use fluoro. You'll notice kokanee fishing, kokanee are not leader shy. There are a couple lakes here in Oregon where you might have some issues with leader. One of them is Crescent Lake because of the water clarity, and the other one is Paulina. I will tell you that at the Derby up at Crescent Lake, I was fishing that 13.9 and I released at least 60 fish. So I didn't have any issues with it. For my long lining setup, I've got this set up for salmon fishing, so I actually do have braided line on it. The braided line will give me a little bit better action with the Cousin Carl, but if you have somebody new to the boat that doesn't know how to use a reel like small kids, I'd recommend a 15 pound test mono. You'll get a little bit of stretch out of it. There's absolutely no stretch with this braid, so you really have to baby them in with this setup. But I get a little bit better action off my Cousin Carl's. And then again, I have basically the 13.9 or 15 pound test line for the main line on that. The other reason I use the 8 is I get a little bit more on the downrigger setup. I get more line on the reel. So actually, this reel right here, I've got about 270 yards of line on it. So I got plenty of line. So, is there any questions?
No questions.
How come your wife catches more fish than you do?
Boy.
He lets me.
The main reason is she's got a better reaction time than I do. It's more like, hey, this rod here, so I usually get shoved and get the net. So yeah, my wife does reel in quite a few fish on the boat. My enjoyment in this fishery is really trying to figure out what the fish want. So it's kind of like a chess game to me to figure it out, and I usually let people reel the fish in. I mean, it's fun, especially if they're big, but my whole enjoyment, I like trying to out-trick these fish, figuring out what it wants. Every time I'm out on the lake, it's different. So it's kind of like me going through my scenarios and trying to figure out what the boogers want.
What's the deal with your weight?
The weight, this weight is actually made by one of my friends. It's a 10 pound weight. They were first used in California. The main reason I use it is it cuts through the water column a little bit better than a pancake or a ball. But the biggest reason I use it is because if I go over a stump with this weight, it's going to go over the stump and drop, where a pancake or a ball is going to get jammed in the stump and you'll lose it. I've had this at Wiki Up where I was in 40 feet of water going up in 10 with my cables straight back behind my boat with these. I just reeled them in and they came right in. I know Kent uses them on his boat. I had a whole bunch of them for sale. This is the only one I have right now, but if you're interested in getting them, I don't sell them on the website. They're too expensive for me to ship. But if you're in the Salem area and you want some, I can have my friend make them. They're really good. They were first designed so that they could drag the bottom. In California, a lot of lakes are only allowed 5. It's a warmer water there, so those bigger ones are like hanging down at the bottom. So what they do is they irritate them with the weight. The fish would shoot up through the water column, and then they'd have tackle up above and hit them. So it was it's basically a tournament technique, or in like California. But the main reason I use it, because I usually just attack fish in the water column and I'm not singling out fish, is one, it cuts through the water better than a pancake, and number two, I don't have to worry about it snagging on the bottom.
How much does that weigh?
This is 10 pounds. So I recommend 10 pounds unless you have a smaller downrigger. There are some downriggers that don't have the capability of doing 10 pounds, but a 10-pound weight is about perfect for the downriggers.
How many colors of corn and how many different flavors do you take?
I usually take one color with me. A lot of lakes in Oregon have tendencies for colors. Wickiup usually is an orange, doesn't mean it will be. Green Peter's usually a pink or a chartreuse. So I might take a pink, I might take a chartreuse with me to that lake. I mean, it really depends on the lake, but I usually at least have 5 different scents with me. So the one that was working really well for me at Wickiup last year, or my last trip, was something that I made up called Ocean Mess. It's got a bunch of ocean smells in it. I had bloody tuna, squid, krill, herring, and there was something else. Yeah, it was a big. That's why I called it Ocean Mess. But it was working really well. You typically, they say that early in the season you want to start with the ocean smells, and then as the season progresses, then you switch over to freshwater smells. I prefer garlic just because it's an irritant to the fish, and I'm trying to make them upset anyway. So that's why I think garlic works so well. And I do know some people that have some absolute top secret corn recipes that I've been trying to get out of them for a long time that have garlic in them. So I know a guy that uses garlic and then some other stuff that I haven't quite gotten out of them yet. We're working on it still, but I know garlic's an irritant to the kokanee. So plus it'll also hide any human scent, even though my dad told me we don't have that problem in our family. So I know there are some chemical makeups with people that sometimes they might have issues catching fish, but the garlic will hide the scent really well, and plus it's an irritant to the kokanee. Yep.
Is there a website or video on filleting kokanee?
Yeah, actually, I have a. The question was, is there a video on filleting kokanee? I have a video on my website. Or you can just go to YouTube and type in Kokanee Kid, no space, and you'll see the video on there. I will tell you that I'm extremely slow at filleting the fish. I'm not a speedy person. I take my time with it. But when I get done doing a fillet, it's going to be the best looking fillet you've ever seen. And when I give it out to somebody, they're like, wow, that's awesome. So you can see my fillets up there. I spend a lot of time catching the fish. I take pride in taking extreme care with the fish when they're on my boat, and I take my time when I'm filleting them. My dad says I'm crazy, but it's just how I do it on my boat. So yeah, if you just go to YouTube, type Kokanee Kid, no space, just one word, it'll show up. Or you can just go to my website, and I have multiple videos on there. And there should be more. I bought an underwater camera that I'm going to mess with when I'm going to Wickiup here shortly. So there should be some underwater video footage. I'd like to show the difference between different leader links and how they work with dodgers, just so that people can get a visual, saying that if I run 2 feet a leader with a hoochie, this is what it looks like in the water compared to like 8 inches, and why that works. So and then I've been getting a lot of requests on doing cooking videos. I'm going to do one on how to can kokanee, and maybe some how to smoke it as well. So anything else?
Pickle good too. They'll pickle.
Yeah, I had somebody that was asking me about that. I haven't tried that yet.
They're really good.
Huh.
They're just as good as pickles ever.
Yeah. Huh. Yep.
You normally find out that you catch more fish with a downrigger than you do longline.
To be honest with you, I catch more fish longline than I do on the downrigger. And actually, if I have problems with the downrigger, I can put the longline out and catch fish. It's way more enjoyable to me to catch them on the downrigger. And also, sometimes if they're really balled up in schools, I have an easier time attacking them with the downrigger because you can make tighter circles. With a long lining gear, you have a harder time. If I get 60 feet behind the boat, I mean, it's pretty difficult to make a quick turn where if I've only got 20 feet of line on my setback, I mean, I can turn real fast and go right back through them. So, I mean, it depends. But if I'm struggling with the downriggers, that long lining setup will catch fish pretty much year round. So. Yep.
How much weight do you normally run on that long line?
I like 2 ounces. Actually, that video that you saw where the fish were running between 60 and 90 feet, I was using 2 ounces and still picking them up. When people think of fish, usually the fish are looking straight up. So if you have something that they want, they will come up quite a distance. 10 feet to a fish is nothing. So they were actually coming up quite a distance to hit my long line tackle. So the lighter the weight, the better. Sometimes you might have to use 5. That is absolutely, it's not that much fun. I'm going to use my downriggers then. So if I can get away with 2 ounces, that's usually a pretty standard weight for me for that long line setup. Yep.
Is there times when you jig versus down and long?
Yeah, I personally do not jig for kokanee. I troll year-round for them. I catch them year-round trolling. I will tell you that early in the season, there is no faster way to put kokanee in your boat than jigging. It's a really good technique casting for jumpers. I know right now up at Odell Lake, that's typically what they're doing is jigging for them up there. If you are going to jig for them, Kent's got a huge write-up in his book on how to do it, but normally you're using a spinning reel, and you have that with braided line, and then you have about 2 feet of monofilament, and then what you're doing is you're casting out at jumpers, having the jig flutter, then you might do a little jerk, and when it flutters again, usually it gets hit. Personally, I just have a lot more enjoyment trolling for the fish and seeing rods go off. So that's what I grew up doing. I didn't grow up jigging, and at heart I'm a troller, so that's how I catch them. But there's nothing wrong with jigging. I just don't do it personally. Yep.
So late season scents besides garlic, what do you do?
Late season scents. You could try crawdad. It just depends. And every time you go out on the lake, it's a little bit different. If I just had to pick one scent that I was going out on the lake, that garlic has just been absolutely, especially with those water solubles, that's been really, really good. The krill can be good. Also, anise can be good. It's a really good scent. It's an irritant as well, and it'll also mask your human smell as well. But if you haven't used the water solubles, take a look at them because they work really well. They're not an oil-based system. They're not going to get all over your boat. One of the main reasons I didn't like scents in my boat was it got all over my reel, it got all over my rods, and you can see it actually working in the water column when you jump it in the water with the corn. So it's pretty phenomenal. They did a really good job designing that. So, and I carry quite a few different flavors. But if you're going to pick one, go with the garlic.
Do you use gloves at all?
No, I do not use gloves.
That's why his wife fixes it.
Yeah. Well, wife usually doesn't touch the tackle. Usually I'm putting it on. She's better at the reels. Plus, she'll also bring bananas on my boat, which I really hate too. So, usually you'll see guides using gloves mainly because there's a lot of chemicals and stuff that they have on the herring and stuff, and they're trying to protect their hands. I have not seen any issues with me touching tackle on my boat. I do not use sunscreen. There's some things that I just won't use on my boat, and I probably should use sunscreen, but I don't, just because I don't want any type of a weird smell on my tackle or the blade. So there are some things I do avoid on my boat, but I don't use gloves.
What else besides sunscreen?
Boy. I wouldn't recommend smoking. There's some, there's things that, aren't a natural smell, lotions, anything like that. I don't mess with it. So I just try avoiding any type of a non-natural smell on my hands. Question?
Do you ever use worms or anything else?
Yeah, worms can be really, really effective for fishing for kokanee. I personally do not use them because I hate catching rainbows. So I release anything on my boat that isn't a kokanee. So if you want to catch other varieties of fish, it's great. I have, they work. You can catch kokanee with worms, but usually when you start putting something else besides corn on your hooks, you're opening up a whole different variety of fish that are going to be attacking your tackle. So I know a lake that I definitely wouldn't do it would be Detroit Lake. It's probably one of the heaviest rainbow planted lakes in Oregon. If you put a worm on it, you probably wouldn't have your gear up long enough to even try catching a kokanee. So for me personally, I prefer just 2 pieces of corn. You're still going to catch rainbow, you're still going to catch browns, you're going to catch all sorts of varieties of fish, but I don't really want to catch anything but a kokanee. So actually, my last trip to Wickiup, I caught a really, really big rainbow, huge. And I wanted to get a picture of it, but my wife had a kokanee on the, she was just yelling, "Get that thing off, I'm gonna get the net." So, but yeah, so it got dumped. I didn't get a picture. It was a nice rainbow, but yeah. So they work, worms work, but I just don't personally use them on my boat. Anything else? Yep.
You allude to hot spots. Do you find that the hot spot in the lake might be consistent year after year?
Yeah, there are places that kokanee tend to hang out with at certain times of the year. Sometimes you'll see them off of points that come out into the lake. There's areas usually early in the spring. Tally Creek's a great place that I like early in the spring and at Green Peter. But normally what they'll do is they'll hang out in the tributaries early spring, work their way towards the middle, going towards the dam is later, and then work their way back. That would be a good scenario for Green Peter. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you just really got to hunt for them as well. But yeah, there are typical spots where, you know, later in the season at Green Peter, there's a couple spots off to the right as you're going to the dam that are little cut-ins. I like hitting those points on those cut-ins. I usually get at least some bigger fish out of the deal. But yeah, I have spots that I like going over. And then if I catch fish, I'll go back through them. And then sometimes you'll scare them out in the middle. So, but yeah, there are. If you fish a lake long enough, you'll notice little spots that'll hold fish. Wickiup's got some shallows over by the Davis Arm that actually has old creek systems that come in that can be really good fishing at times too. They'll kind of hunker down into it's shallow, it's like 16 feet, but these little creek systems that were old will be in a little bit deeper, and sometimes you'll catch some bigger ones that are hanging out in that.
Any difference of going with the wind or against the wind?
Boy, it really, I haven't really noticed any difference going with the wind, against the wind. Basically what you want to do is just keep your boat speed down or up or whatever. I mean, if you're going with the wind, sometimes your speed will go up through the roof, but it's basically whatever you can maintain your boat at. A lot of times if the wind's blowing really hard, if you just wind drift, that'll work pretty good instead of really forcing yourself to go against the wind, which can be difficult. I have an autopilot on my system, so it's not too difficult, but if it gets too windy, I usually just get off the lake. So, yep.
Does sun or cloud make a difference in what blade you use?
It can. Yeah, and I've noticed sometimes if I have a lure that's working really hot first thing in the morning, I'll hold it aside, and if the clouds come out or we get later towards the evening, if I throw it back out, that lure will heat up again. And I've also noticed going towards the sun or away from the sun, you can have, sometimes trolling one direction in the lake, you'll catch a lot of fish, and then when you turn around, it might not be as good. And the other thing I've noticed too is I had a day that I was out at Green Peter with my wife and Jerry, and I was doing circles out towards the island in the restroom, and Jerry was just killing fish. I think he was on the inside circle, and we were just doing circles. Just one, he's just laughing at my wife, and I said, "You want to catch some fish, Deb?" So I just turned the boat the other direction. My wife started catching all the fish, and Jerry was like, "What the heck?" So sometimes it's just those little things, you know, that you can do. I mean, basically my gear on the inside circle is dropping a little bit, and it's probably running a little bit slower, but you'll see little things that'll happen. But I just work through my tackle and try figuring out what they want, and it changes, you know, from minute to minute to day. It's very rare that I'll have something that's just killing them, and I'll go fish with it the next day, and it'll do. So, is there anything else?
One more question before we
Sure.
gotta watch our time.
Yep, sorry.
But no, you're doing
Okay.
fine. No, we're right on schedule. So I don't want to cut you off too early because we want folks to be able to get over to your display and buy
Sure.
gear, but we also have raffles that we need to get out for those who bought all those raffle tickets. So is there one last question here?
I was just gonna say, the reason I get more fish is because I eat bananas on the boat.
Okay. By the way, you know, Jeremy was here last year, and we do have a copy of that video back here. If you're in securing one. We also have, Kent was here the other year, and we have Kent's presentation here as well. So if you're interested in it, we do have copies of these available for purchase back there.